Hello, good day viewers. Into this tutorial we are going to see the separation of variables. So first we are given this question to separate. So for any separation variables, an equation must satisfy the integral of what? Of f of y dy plus what? Plus the integral of what? Of f of, okay, let's say I have, yes, f of y. So let's say I have g of x dx must be equals to 0. As you can see, this equation is the same thing as this equation. So for any separation variables, but the difference is that there is no integration. We have a function of x and we have a function of y which is equal to 0. So after separating, what we are going to do to this, we are going to say this will be equal to f of what? Y dy plus what? Okay, it will now be equals, when it crosses the equal sign, it will now be negative g of what? G of x negative what? G of x dx. So therefore, as you can see, we separate y and also we separate x. So in separation of variables, after separating the variables, then you are going to integrate both sides. Then you will solve what's in the value of what? Y. So how can we separate this variable? So first I'm given this. The next thing to do is that I will say x squared should now be equals to y squared, x squared multiplied by y squared dx. I repeat this. So therefore I have to say this will be equals to, when this value of this y cross the equal sign, it will now be negative y what? Negative y x cubed plus 1 plus 1 what? Plus 1 dy. So the next thing that I'm going to do, I have to what? I'm looking for x variables and what? Y variable. So I have to divide both sides by what? By this y square plus 1, and therefore divide by what? Root of what? X cubed plus 1, and therefore also divide by what? Y square plus 1, and also what? Root of x cubed plus 1. In order what? In order to get values of y different and therefore the value of x different. That is what we call the separation. You have to separate your variables. So therefore, as you can see, this will cancel this, and therefore this will cancel this. At the end, I'm left with what? I'm left with x squared dx by what? By root of x cubed plus 1, and therefore this will be equals to minus y what? Minus y by dy divided by the value of y squared plus 1. So as you can see, I've separated what? The value of x and value of y. This is the value of x and this is what? This is the value of y. So what is the next thing that I'm going to do? The next thing that I'm going to do, I have to integrate both sides. So if I integrate both sides, I will left with the integral of what? Integral of x squared by what? By x cubed in square root x cubed plus what? Plus 1 should now be equals to what? Should now be equals to the integral of what? I have to bring out the negative sign, minus what? Minus y squared plus what? Plus 1 dy. So what is the next thing that I'm going to do? I'm going to integrate this, and therefore I'm going to what? Integrate that. So but you have to take a look to this integration. We cannot integrate it directly. We're supposed to use the U substitution method. So let's first deal with what? With this integration. So I have to say that the integration of what? Integration of x squared by what? By root of x cubed plus 1 should now be equals to, I have to let this to be u. I have to, let's say this to be m. Let me let this to be m. I have to say that I have what? I have x cubed plus 1. You have to let this to be m. After letting it to be m, so you have to find what? You have to find the derivative of this m. So therefore, the derivative of dm by dx, dm by dx should now be equals to what? Should now be equals to 3x squared plus what? Plus 0. So I have to say dx, or you can also put what? Dm. When you put dm, you mean that you differentiate the value of what? The value of this m. So the next thing that you are going to do is that you have to find the value of dx. Since this is dm, so what about dx? So I have to say dm, it is equals to what? 3x squared what? Dx. If I divide both sides by 3x squared by 3x squared, this will cancel this. At the end, I will have what? At the end, I will have dx should now be equals to what? Dm by what? By 3x squared. So I'm going to substitute this value of m into this integral. So I have to say the integral of x squared divided by, I said this to be m, so therefore I have to say the root of what? Root of capital M, and therefore what is the value of dx? I have dx here. Yes, I have dx, and also I have what? I have my dx. So what is dx? Dx, it is this. It is what? It is dm over what? Over 3x squared. The next thing is that, as you can see, this x squared will cancel x squared. So this should now be equals to the integral of what? 1 over what? 1 over m in root. Or let me say, the root of what? Root of m is the same thing as having m a half. So therefore I have to say that this should now be equals to what? M a half, and therefore I have to say multiplied by what? Multiplied by dm over what? Over 3. So this should now be equals to, you all know that 1 over 3 is the same thing, multiplied by dm is the same thing as dm over 3. So I have to factor out. Okay, I have to bring out the 1 over 3. So therefore I have to say 1 over 3 integral of what? 1 over m a half multiplied by what? Multiplied by dm. So what is the next thing that I'm going to do? The next thing that I'm going to do is that I have to say this is equivalent of having integral of m to the negative a half. Did you all agree? Yes, you must agree with this. So therefore I have to say by what? By dm. So now I'm free to integrate m raised to the power of negative a half. I'm free to integrate it. So therefore to integrate this, I will say m negative a half plus 1 divided by the whole this, which is 1 over 2 plus what? Plus 1. I am integrating with respect to dm. So as you can see, there is no need of putting this dm again because I am integrating with respect to dm. So this should now be equals to, if I say negative a half plus 1, this is the same thing as over 1. What is the LCM? LCM, which is 2. 2 into 2, 1. 1 multiplied by negative 1, negative 1. 2 into this, 2. 2 multiplied by 1, which is 2, plus 2. Minus 1 plus 2 is the same thing as half. So therefore I will have what? M a half divided by what? The same thing, it will be what? It will be a half. But don't forget I have this 1 over 3. So therefore I have to be multiplying it by what? By this 1 over 3. So what is the next thing that I'm going to do? The next thing that I'm going to do is that I have to say my 1 over 3 multiplied by what? By m a half. But you all know that this is the same thing. Divided by a half is the same thing as saying I should just multiply by what? I should just say I will multiply by what? By 2 over 1. So this shall now become what? Shall now become 2 over 3 of what? Of m a half. Did you all agree? If I said 1 over 3 and then I should say m a half divide by what? Divide by the value of what? Divide by the value of 1 over 2 as usual. So if I say divide by the value of what? 1 over 2. So I have to do the reciprocal. If I do reciprocal, this shall now become multiplication, and therefore the number will interchange. It will become 2 and 1. So if I multiply this by this, I will get 2. 3 by 1, I will get what? 3. So this is what I did. So what is the next thing that I'm going to do? Where shall I go to clean? So let me clean here. So the next thing that I'm going to do is that I have to say the 2 over 3 of what? Of m a half is the same thing as saying 2 over 3. Where is the value of m? I let this to be m. So therefore, m, and don't forget that m a half is the same thing as root of what? As root of m. Please don't be confused. So this is the same thing as saying x what? Look at it. X cubed plus what? X cubed plus what? Plus 1. So as you can see, I'm done with this, with the integral of what? Integral of this. So I have to keep it aside. So let me say I'll keep it as let me clean it. Let me clean this. So the integral of this shall now become what? Shall now become 2 over 3 of what? Of cube of x cubed plus 1. This shall now be equals to the integral of this. So how can I find the integral of what? The integral of this. Also the same method, I have to say negative y over y squared plus 1 dy what? Dy. So since I let this to be what? M, so let me let this to be n. When this becomes n, I will say n should now be equals to y squared plus 1. So therefore the n shall now be equals to what? Shall now be equals to 2y plus 0. But I have to put dx. So this is the value of what? Dm. So what about dx? If I divide both sides by 2y, I will end up with what? Dx shall now be equals to what? Shall now be equals to dn by what? By 2y. So the next thing is that I have to say I have to say negative integral of y divided by, I said this should be n. So the next thing to do is that I have to say dy. What is dy? Okay, sorry, this is not dx, this is not dx. I'm sorry for that. It is dy. So what is dy? Dy it should be what? dn by 2y. As you can see, y will cancel y. So at the end, I will have negative 1 over n. Negative 1 over n of what? Of dn by 2. So I have to factor out this 1 over 2 because dn multiplied by 1 over 2 is the same thing as dn by 2. So this is all for this. So the next thing is that I have to say the negative a half. So this 1 over 2, I bring them out. It should now be integral of what? 1 over n dn. So what is the next thing to do? The next thing to do is that I have to say the negative a half. When I integrate 1 over n, it will be what? It will be natural log. The ln of what? The ln of what? Ln of n. So the next thing to do is that I have to say this negative a half is the same thing as what? Yes, I have to say the ln of what? Ln of, I let n to be what? To be y squared plus 1. Yeah. So I have to say, but you have to know that I have to say plus what? Plus constant. Plus constant. So this should now be equals to negative a half of ln of what? Y squared plus 1 plus C2, which is what? The constant. Feel free to pause the video and continue with the calculation, or whether you will find the right answer. So let me clean this. So the next thing that I'm going to do is that I have to get away of this fraction. So what should I do? To get away of this fraction, let me multiply by the LCM of this fraction. I have 2 here, I have 3. 3 multiplied by 2, which is 6. So if I multiplied here by 6, if I multiplied here by 6, if I multiplied here by 6, all by 6. So therefore this should now be 2. 2 multiplied by 2, which is 4. 6 divided by 3, it will give me what? 2. 2 multiplied by 2, which is 4. So I have to say I have 4. Sorry, I have to put it here. So I have to say 4 into root of what? Root of x cubed plus what? X cubed plus 1. And therefore I will have plus what? Plus 6c1. because I will multiply by this constant. So this should now be equals to, if I multiply here by 6, this should now be what? 3. 6 divided by 2, it will give me 3. So I'll end up with what? Negative 3 ln of what? Natural log of what? Y squared plus what? Plus 1, and therefore plus what? Plus 6c2. So this is all for that. So what is the next thing to do? The next thing to do, I have to say that the 6, this should now be equals to 4 root of x cubed plus 1 shall now be equals to minus 3 ln of what? Ln of y squared plus 1 plus what? 6c2. This plus 6c1 should now cross the equal sign. It will become negative 6c1. So I have to say 6c2 minus what? 6c1 is the same thing as what? As c3. So this should now be equals to 4 root of what? Root of x cubed plus 1 should now be equals to negative 3 ln of what? Ln of y squared plus what? Plus 1. Ln of y squared plus 1. Yes, it will now be what? Plus what? Plus c3. So, what is the next thing that I'm going to do? Don't forget, I'm looking for what? I'm looking for the value of what? Of y. Because at the end, I will find the solution of what? Of y. The next thing that I'm going to do, I have to say, I have to take a look to this. When negative 3 ln of what? Y squared cross this equal sign, and this should now get back to that equal sign. At the end, it will become what? This will now become positive ln what? Ln y squared plus 1 plus what? Plus c3, and therefore should now be equals to what? Negative 4 root of what? Root of x cubed plus what? Plus 1. So the next thing is that you all know that this 3 is the same thing as 14, the ln of what? The ln of y squared plus 1 into the power of what? Into the power of 3 plus what? Plus the constant c, which is equal to negative 4 into root of what? X cubed plus what? Plus 1. I hope you are not lost. So the next thing that I'm going to, let me clean this, make sure you copy it. The next thing is that I have to say, in here, I have to take the e raised to the power of what? Y squared plus y. I will take the what? The exponential function of what? Of both sides. I have to the power of what? 3 multiplied by what? Okay, I have plus what? This is plus what? This is plus c3. So therefore I have to say e to the what? So therefore I'll have plus what? E to the c3. But having this plus e to the c3, it will not be in here. So therefore I will just say the e3 also, when this c3 should now cross what? Should now cross to this equal sign, it will now be what? Negative what? Negative c3. And therefore I have to say that this negative c3 should now be what? Negative, let's say negative, okay, should now be positive c4. It's the same thing as this. So therefore this should now become what? Should now become plus what? Plus c4. So this should now be equals to what? I have to also take e to the function, the exponential function of this what? Negative 4 into root of what? X cubed plus what? Plus 3. So the next thing that I'm going to do is that I have to say this will go with this. So therefore should now be y squared plus 1 to the third power. It will now be equals to what? E to the what? Negative 4 into root of x cubed plus what? Plus 1 plus what? Plus c3. And therefore this is the same thing as saying I have y squared plus what? Y squared plus 1. So the next thing that I'm going to do, I have to say that this is the same thing as saying y squared plus what? Plus 1 to the third power. It will now be equals to e to the 4 root of what? Root of x cubed plus 1. And therefore I have to distribute this again. This is the same thing as saying this should now be what? C3. Because if I say e to the what? Negative this, because it is multiplication, so therefore it's the same thing as saying 4 to the root of what? X cubed plus 1, and therefore what? plus what? Plus c what? Plus c3. It is all the same thing. So the next thing that I'm going to do is that, don't forget I have this what? This cube. So I have to multiply both sides by the what? By the half of what? Half of the power of what? 1 over 3, which is what? Power of what? Power of 1 over 3, because this 3 will cancel what? This 3. So this shall now be equals to what? Y squared plus 1. It will now be equals to, let me put it here. This shall now be equals to what? Y squared plus 1. It will be equals to what? E to the negative 4 into root of what? Into root of x cube plus 1, and therefore multiplied by e to the what? E to the c3, but all in cube. 1 over what? 1 over 3. So the next thing that I'm going to do, because I have this positive one, so therefore positive one shall cross that equal sign, it will now become negative. So y squared, it will now be equals to what? E to the negative 4 to the x cube plus 1 multiplied by e to the c3 in what? 1 over 3 minus 1. So don't forget I have square root again. So I have to say the square root of both sides, square root of both sides, square will cancel what? Square. The next thing is that, as you can see, y should now be equals to what? Shall now be equals to e to the negative 4 of what? Of x cube plus 1, and therefore I will say multiply by e to the what? E to the constant c3, close bracket. I have negative 1, and therefore I'll have what? I'll have my square root. So I am done or not? So therefore I can say, also I can say this should now be what? This should now be, this is this c3 and what? The c3, you have to take note that even if I say 100 c1, it means 100 constant. So therefore I can replace it as what? C4 or C5 or anything else. So therefore this is the same thing as saying the e raised to the power of c3, I can reset it as what? C4, or I can say it is c1, or I can say it is k or something else. So therefore I have to say this y should, the general solution, y shall now be equals to c4 multiplied by y, by what? E to the what? 4 into root of what? Root of x cube plus what? Plus 1. All in what? All in 1 over 3, and therefore minus 1. So therefore this is the general solution for this separation of variables. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thanks you for watching. Have a nice day.